be alive.
Okay, now we are live. So here we are, Sarah. We finally made it to the topic that we were pretty much supposed to talk about from the beginning.
Yeah,
The
nice
military,
roundabout.
exactly. The military-industrial complex.
Yes.
So last time we left off, we had gotten about halfway through. Well, actually, we pretty much got up until the collapse of the Soviet Union, but maybe we should go back a little bit. Do you know much about the Vietnam War?
I have like a decent understanding of it. I definitely find it fascinating, so it's something that I have read about. But it's not something that I can speak to as well as I can on maybe World War II.
Okay.
I will say Forrest Gump did teach me a lot.
It's one of my, that's actually a great, it covers so much. I've seen that movie about 5 times. Each time I see it, I see a new piece of, oh, wow. I did
exactly.
not
I think we talked about Forrest Gump last time too.
Yeah, the feather.
But just random fun fact about Forrest Gump, because I love the movie so much. Vietnam, the set was on the other side of the lake from where his house was in Alabama.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
What's that? Well, I mean, most people, if you haven't,
magic alert.
Yeah, magic alert. Maybe I was gonna say, if you haven't seen Forrest Gump by now, then you don't deserve a spoiler alert.
No.
Okay, so 2 things about Vietnam, but first, actually, let's go back a little bit because there was something that I had brought up last time, which is like after World War II, you have this massive wartime economy that had gotten the country out of the Great Depression.
Right.
And there were 2 paths, one of which, 2 paths to maintaining this prosperity. One of which was through focusing on a new enemy, which was the Soviet Union, the Cold War. And the other one, which I didn't actually get into, was the consumerist model, basically focusing on suburbia, getting Americans to consume, and that'll keep the engine of the economy. Sort of Madison Avenue, Edward Bernays again, the guy that got the PR for World War I going.
Yeah.
And we've been living with that for the last 80 years, basically, consumerism.
Yeah, when you look at that type of thing, you think you've evolved so far, and then you kind of just realize, hey, we're pretty much in the same spot we were, just different technology, different time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so ingrained, we don't even really realize that it's probably the most prevalent propaganda of our lives. You look at places like North Korea, and we go, oh, like how brainwashed are they? That's insane. We're like, we don't realize our own, gradual brainwashing through advertising and companies trying to manipulate us by exploiting our insecurities and then saying, hey, here's this product that'll fix that for you.
Definitely. When I was in, I think it was my senior year of high school, I was in a communications class, and we learned about like the subliminal messaging and propaganda that goes into commercials. And it's a very if-then type deal. And when you look at old commercials and new commercials now, it's very much the same. If you have this product, then it will be better. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is the fact that we're so susceptible to it. It's just kind of like, really, guys?
It's actually reminding me of, have you ever seen the Michael Moore documentary, Bowling for Columbine?
I have. That was a phenomenal documentary.
That's about the only documentary of his that I've seen, and it was a great one. And there was a scene where actually, of all people, Marilyn Manson, remember that one, was talking to Michael Moore, and he was talking about consumer culture. And I just thought, first of all, what he said was right on. Second of all, that was the first time I'd really actually heard Marilyn Manson speak. And I was thinking, whoa, this guy is really smart.
It blows your mind when you hear someone like Marilyn Manson actually start talking, because you get this preconceived notion of
oh, he's a weirdo or something like
that. Sorry, I just had to argue with a bunch of notes that are on my desk for another final I'm writing. But someone like Marilyn Manson, that is your definition of judging a book by its cover. Because if you sit and listen to some of his interviews and just his general musings, you're kind of like, oh, you're more than just kind of scary looking. You've got a lot going on beneath the surface. And I always appreciate that. I think in general, and just to tie in the fact that people were afraid of me at summer camp just because I had tattoos, short hair, and resting bitch face.
That'll do it.
You know, it's a look. I think, and this is so generic, but you know, you don't know the substance of someone by their outward appearance. And I feel like if everybody got a chance to speak freely for like a minute, depending where they're at, you would find more depth than you would realize.
That is extremely rare that anybody would ever find themselves in a position where they would be able to speak freely and have an audience. Like, it's one thing to be able to speak freely when nobody's there or nobody's listening, but just be able to speak freely and have people listen to you is actually much rarer than most people realize.
Oh,
So
definitely.
I agree with you. Definitely.
If come on, Sarah, make some words. One thing that I hope to do while I'm in grad school is teach, because there's an opportunity with the federal teach program. And one thing I would want to do is, if I had students, to give them 1 minute to just speak freely, not on the topic or, you know, whatever, but just who are you? What are your ideals? What do you think? Things like that. Just because I would want to know, you know, everybody's got their own story. Everybody's got the thing that, you know, piques their interest and things like that. And I think that's worth knowing.
It is. And by the way, I like being wrong about people. I don't know what it is. I like misjudging people in a way and being proven wrong. And I also like being underestimated myself.
I love that.
About it.
I'm with you on that. As you've said before, as a kindred spirit, I love being underestimated, because then it's just kind of like, ha, look at me now.
Pretty satisfying.
It is. Like, I think 2 days ago, my official like folder for grad school came in. And I swear I'm not just like sitting here bragging that I got in, but it came in and I took a picture of it, put it on my Instagram story, and put the song Hey Look Ma, I Made It with it. And, you know, 10 years ago when I was graduating high school, I never thought I'd find myself in this position because I didn't care about academia and stuff like that. And there were a lot of people that messaged me and were like, this is shocking. You know, I didn't know you were like, I didn't know you had that in you. And it was like, well,
I didn't know either, but I did.
It was a surprise for both of us.
That's cool.
Yeah, being underestimated, I think, for the right person, pushes you to find your full potential.
It does. It absolutely does. And by the way, I could keep going down that pathway. I'm realizing now I should back out. So Vietnam. A lot of people don't realize this, but the Vietnam War was started in an area known as the Gulf of Tonkin. And so there was a resolution drafted after an incident in the Gulf of Tonkin, where what allegedly happened was some North Vietnamese ships were firing on an American surveillance ship that was in the area, trying to determine sort of what the North Vietnamese were doing.
Right.
And that word got back to DC, and remember, this is like 1960s technology, so there was like a 12-hour. Well, there's the delay. You know,
time difference and delay.
It's just the time. It's primarily the time difference. There's a 12-hour time difference, and then they drafted a resolution. Congress did, to grant like enormous wartime powers to Lyndon B. Johnson to be able to basically do whatever he wanted. And it was discovered later on, or it was really known pretty much at that time, that it wasn't actually these boats, North Vietnamese boats, that were firing on the U.S. ship, but it was a weather incident where they were firing, the waves were seen on the radar system of the boats, and they thought they were ships. And then it's kind of a ridiculous scenario. These boats were firing at each other, and one of them almost pressed the button to just like annihilate what they saw on the radar, and it was the other U.S. ship that was there. So this whole thing
Oh,
that launched the Vietnam War was a mistake, and it
and
was. Go ahead.
no, after you.
Well, I was going to say it is eerie how similar it was to the Iraq War with the WMDs. Eerie.
100%. And just saying like a mistake and eerily similar just made me think of, my parents are of the age where my dad's draft card was actually 28. That was his draft number, but he was in school, so he never ended up going. Which, if you know him, it just would make no sense. He's like the most mellow guy in the world. But
Yeah.
my parents' friends, like a lot of them, went to Vietnam, and one of them, and I think he was a radar operator, said that the similarity between a typical game at an arcade where you rolled a ball around to control the screen
Mhm.
was almost exactly the same as a radar screen. And I think that is interesting, like if you think about Call of Duty and stuff too.
Mhm.
So
So it was just like an extremely rudimentary
extreme,
device back in the 60s, which
and
didn't seem that long ago, but
yeah, and made it that much easier to take people out of their civilian lives, plop them into military lives, and give them this sense of it'll be all right, probably.
man, that really frustrates me, and it makes me sad to think about how history took a turn based off of this event. And you find this a lot when you look at the pivotal moments of history, that it wasn't like you think it's some like grand plan or intellectual plot or something major, and it comes down to like some small human tendency like self-protection after messing up. A
Yeah,
couple people are like, well, let's just, we don't want people to know that we were wrong on this one, so let's just keep the momentum going.
yeah, completely. And I mean, the only thing I can think of to counter that is 9/11. But then there's the whole, was it an inside job thing, and that'll be another
Another
hour of,
I do
yeah,
know with 9/11, after reading those books that I had mentioned last time by Tim Weiner, about the CIA
yeah,
and the FBI, that a lot of it was just like the intelligence agencies competing against each other effectively and not sharing information.
yeah. Oh,
Uh,
and now that I'm done with school and those books are going back to the bookstore, I'm gonna be rating your collection, and
you're
I'm gonna be
welcome to
like,
it. The other major piece about Vietnam that I bring up, and by the way, other Vietnam material that listeners, viewers might find really interesting. The Ken Burns documentary, phenomenal. It's like a 10-part
yes,
series. So good. So freaking good. And there's also a series, I have to find out exactly what it is. Um, but there's a series on YouTube where it was like PBS, I think, was interviewing people in the 60s and 70s about their feelings about the Vietnam War. So it was like parents, people from Vietnam, soldiers, counterculture, everyone, and it is really. And I was actually interviewing people in the '90s and reflecting back from 3 decades prior.
I
So
know kind of what you're talking about on YouTube, but yes, the Ken Burns documentary, any Ken Burns documentary that I've come across so far, but the Ken Burns documentary, like if you watch or take in nothing else about the Vietnam War, do that, and you'll find a new sense of, in one on one hand, just what the fuck, but on the other hand, you'll find a new sense of, I want to say like value, but that's not what I mean. Like
yes,
validity, maybe.
it's so textured. It's like he really did such a careful job of picking every possible angle of the war in interviewing somebody from that angle.
he did a deep dive, and then if you looked at it like pixels, he found every edge of the pixel, and
Yeah.
and just looked through it, went through it, all around. It's incredible. Anything by Ken Burns, really. That's one of
I know
his
I have to go into all of his other stuff at some point. I've really mostly just seen that, but
his
it's
hallmarks
pretty
are,
textured. If you're going to pick one thing about Vietnam, start with that. Okay, so
and then maybe Forrest Gump.
yeah, and then
Just a
Forrest.
great movie. Just a great
So
movie.
Vietnam, there was not an easy means of determining if we were successful over there. Like, how do you gauge that? What metrics do you use? Because there's something, I like this saying, there's something that's been said a lot, which is we always fight as if it's the previous war. So the US went into Vietnam acting as if it were World War II. So a lot of the tactics that were fresh in their mind were not really applicable in this little Southeast Asian country. This
Yeah.
you know, kind of there, we walked into the midst of a civil war, and so the main metric that was used by Defense Secretary McNamara and General Westmoreland at the time was body count. And it was such a horrible metric to gauge success by. And the Pentagon papers that came out eventually showed that we had no idea what we were doing in Vietnam. We had no concept of what victory looked like. We would capture hills and be like, oh yeah, this is a victory, and it was not of strategic value at all, and then we'd immediately lose that hill the next day. And body counts were just a terrible metric. And I think that concept of choosing the right metrics is so essential, because I don't think we realize how much that affects our lives. We as humans, we have this obsession with reducing an extremely complex reality into something that we want to feel that we can understand. It's called reification, when you reduce something complex to single value. And we do it with human intelligence, with IQ. I don't think that actually, and I'm not trying to open that box right here, but IQ with GDP for the economy. Like,
Oh my
the
God.
fact that we think that we can understand complex systems with single values, like the
Yeah.
Vietnam War with body counts, is ridiculous. So I just wanted to bring that up.
No, you know what I was just thinking though, going into wars like it's the last one, the war we've been in now for what, 20 years now?
Yeah. Yep.
If we go in to God knows what's next with the same mentality, what the hell's going to happen?
The stakes are raised because it's, we're in a world where our weapons are far more powerful, and we're more distant generationally from the conflict. So people start to get bold again, just like after an economic crisis, after, like a lot of people after a decade, like 2008, right? Now people are like, oh, let's be reckless again, right? You can't afford to be reckless on the front of war,
Yeah,
because it's like planet destroying now. It's like existential crisis.
it's true. It's and you can bring yourself back from an existential crisis.
Yeah, as you
But
do today, apparently.
yeah, no, I was further away from an existential crisis. Just for a thing of background, yesterday I was, all the finals hit me at once and everything, and I initially we were gonna record yesterday, and I texted you and I was like, dude, I have such a bad headache, I like can't see, and I told you I had brought myself back from the brink of an existential crisis, and you were like, you can do that? And like,
It's impressive to be able to do
I
that.
was like, I can, evidently. No, I just had to like separate myself from the work for a little while, and then I was up wicked late because my headache finally cleared, and I was like, now would be a solid time to do work. 2 a.m. Let's write a paper.
Some combination of late schoolwork and caffeine, I would guess, is the cure to an existential crisis. So you might want to patent that.
I might, I might do that, and just throw in there like maybe like a goofy t-shirt and just like a solid conversation, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, all you got to do is put on something funny, pound a monster, make it the middle of the night, oh, I just brought myself back from an existential crisis. Boom, you're done.
Beautiful. The toolkit.
Life changing right there. That or still overtired. Not sure. But yeah, no, back on topic.
Have you, I think I mentioned this last time, ever listened to the Hardcore History podcast? Dan.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So he has a really good episode about nuclear, and it was, I believe, called The Destroyer of Worlds or something like that. He basically talks about how after several generations, like when the nuclear bomb first came on the scene, and then there was the arms race, and we created hydrogen bombs, which are like hundreds of thousand times more powerful than a Hiroshima. And the biggest bomb detonated, Tsar Bomba, by the Soviets, is like insane. All this, check out this episode because there's stuff that most people don't know, like the fact that we were blowing this stuff up in the atmosphere. We fried the electrical grid in Hawaii. There's, oh, okay. So in the Bikini Atoll situation,
Yeah.
uh, so he talked about how at first it's this existential threat to people who are, you know, they were alive before the bomb, and then this new thing exists and they're like, oh man, this could destroy humanity. And then a new generation of people is born and the bomb already exists and they kind of forget that it's there. And then the grandkids are born and then they're like even further removed. So like we sort of forget that we have, I mean, I guess our equivalent is maybe climate change and also technological disruption. This
Yeah.
is what the author Yuval Noah Harari says, the guy that wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus*. He says that the big three right now, the big three existential threats are nuclear bombs, climate change, and the pace of technological change, basically.
Yeah.
And we've sort of forgotten the nuclear threat. You know, it's there, but as Dan Carlin refers to, it's almost like a sword of Damocles where, you know, there's some Greek story where there's a sword hanging from a hair over a
Yeah.
king's head over the throne, and he
Yeah.
forgets that it's there, but it's so delicately balanced.
Yeah. I think like anything nuclear related is trotted out, especially during like election times and stuff.
Mhm.
Just to kind of be like, hey, still a thing.
Yeah.
Don't piss us off. Um, that type of thing. And I think that I don't know, so many things that can be used in a positive way are used more as a threat tactic.
Hmm. They're
Like,
weaponized, right?
yeah, like even climate change, if you think about it, because that's a platform so many people run on, and then when you get like the oh okay, you know, like yeah, I'm down with the climate change, you know, to help fix it, then it gets flipped around on you, and now it's like, well, actually, you support this, this, and this because you threw your support behind this person.
Yeah, pretty. Yeah, it gets built into a platform, and it's also like it gets something that starts out bad gets exponentially catastrophized because crisis moves people, basically. Like you get people on the march with crisis, and that's
Yeah,
what the Department of Defense has realized over the last 80 years with, you know, first uh, World War II, then the Cold War, and then once the Soviet Union collapsed, our major enemy is gone. The Soviet Union is gone. Communism is no longer as much of a threat. What do we do? Terrorism. Terrorism
yeah.
scene, right?
Just all this, like, and thinking about the fact that an election's coming. Andrew Yang, come on, man.
You know.
Oh,
Yeah, with Joe Biden in particular, that's a little bit
there's a
bleak.
great there's a great meme, and like I was and am a big Obama fan. You know, I went to his first inauguration, which was really really cool. Um, you know, I also where we had come from. It was just great. But there's this fantastic meme of Obama like talking to Joe Biden and saying, "Joe, I endorsed you," and him and Biden looking up, going, "For what?"
Oh,
And it's just it's it's a stressful time in American history
mhm.
to say
You froze.
Absolute bare minimum.
You froze for a second. It's
It's
after you said
stressful.
it's a stressful time. What'd you say?
Oh, I said it's a stressful time at absolute bare minimum. It's a stressful
Oh,
time.
oh yeah. And I think that at these times, people start to when you have serious stress. I don't. We're quite. We're not at the bottom yet, but we're getting there. And
Yeah.
I think that at that point, people realize like they start to forget the petty grievances that they had, and they start to realize like, look, we're gonna have to team up and work together to get out of this and to sort of like move into revitalize our institutions, things like that. So I really do think we're headed to that. I don't think it's going to be immediate, but
I wonder what's going to happen in the next election, because yesterday Trump was on the news saying I created the best economy of all time. I did this in the best of all time, and I feel like if you have to tell yourself that you've done the best of all time, you probably didn't. Just a thought.
yeah, yeah. If you have to tell yourself that frequently, get that affirmation.
I mean, it's one thing if you're by yourself saying you can write a paper. You got this. You've done it before. But if it's to your constituents and everything, then you barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Oh,
Okay, so we're basically there. We're now in the modern era.
mhm.
Soviet Union has collapsed. And we were talking at the very end of the last episode about how the paradigm that existed during the Cold War was traditional liberals and paleo conservatives. And we
Yes.
sort of think that's still going on today, but it's not. What came about at the end of the Cold War were these two new groups, neoliberal, or two new ideologies, neoliberalism and neoconservatism. And the neoliberals were the ones who said trade and connecting the world through different like trade networks, basically globalism is going to be the way of the future, and the United States should be responsible for like spreading this. And then the neoconservative view was, well, we no longer have an enemy in the Soviet Union, it's now just us, so the United States should become effectively world police
Yeah.
because we have enemies everywhere. We no longer have the single enemy. Now it's terrorism, which there could be an enemy everywhere.
Yeah. I apologize too. Just
That's okay.
as I say all the time, the allergies. My gosh.
That's okay.
On the spectrum of conservatism and liberalism and finding a way in the middle, it you're damned if you do and damned if you don't when you try to not even just pick a side, just try to relate to a side.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said last time, I'm a very liberal individual, but I don't see the need to go so far left that I can't see the center anymore.
Yeah.
And I just pointed to the right. So that's how well things are going.
Well, on my screen though, you actually did point to the left, so that worked.
And if I went on my left, I'd just hit the wall. So
Yeah.
we're gonna pretend like that was okay.
Go the right direction. That's good.
I do know my left. I checked. It's based on what tattoos I'm looking at. That's how I know.
You have an L and an R tattooed on your hands.
Not yet, but it's coming. I'm just saying, it'll be like, hold on, okay, going that way. All right, got this. That'll go great for exploring places. I'll be like, hold on. That way.
That's a good way to answer somebody if they ask you directions.
Yeah, I'll be like, hold.
And,
If it's like the winter too, I'll take my gloves off and be like, all right. So.
or actually, you should have you should not only have an L and an R tattooed on your hands, you should have a compass tattooed on your hand. And if somebody asks you, like, hold your hand out and be like, I would guess that way.
Yeah, just like see me like slowly turning and be like, it's not moving with me, hold on. Or just like, have a magnet with me, just put it on the bottom of my hand on the top, and then I can figure out true north. Oh, God.
So
Anyway, as far as the political spectrum of neoconservatism and neoliberalism, I think that when you're trying to put yourself there, I think it has to be almost organic where you find yourself on the spectrum. Like you can know that, okay, yeah, I'm more liberal. And yeah, I don't condemn people for who they love or what they do or whatever. I think that's a very organic thing because those are your values and your beliefs. Some you're not born with it because nobody's inherently born with anything. Learning to like and learning to hate are taught characteristics. At the same time, you can either, take what you've been taught and go, I completely agree or I completely disagree. Then you move forward and you go, all right, now that I know kind of where I lie, if you get on the political spectrum to the point that you're going to go, I know that I want to run all the way to one side or the other, I think then, and this is just my opinion, you're overreaching to make a point.
Mm.
It's like going, I have to make this declaration that I know that I think, or that what I think surpasses what everyone else is thinking. So I'm going to go so far onto my side of the spectrum that I can't even hear what you're saying if you don't think like me.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. I think that we need to basically change our old, outdated, seriously old mental model of just left and right, because it's more like a quadrant or a circle where it's like you can effectively go so far in one direction that you wrap back around. It's not really linear out in both directions.
It's not as simple as left and right anymore, because now you've got so many factions coming off of each side, whether it's protesters or counter protesters or small groups or big groups or anything like that. And they say united we stand, divided we fall. How united are we if we're taking pieces of what unites us and then just breaking ourselves down further and further and further and further and further to the point that, are we united still? And that's a very big question. I mean, I don't expect an answer for that, but like, if you stop and think about it, it's like, what the hell is going on?
I think, yeah, it's a really good question.
I would like an answer. Go.
I could hazard a guess. It's a little bit complex, but have you seen the political compass where you have left and right on the horizontal, and then the vertical is authoritarian and libertarian?
Yes, I have. It reminded me of those things we used to do in bio.
Yeah, I actually forced a bunch of my family and friends to take that around Christmas time. It was pretty interesting. It's not like a foolproof test or anything like that. It's just you get sort of an idea of people.
Yeah.
I could take it 5 times and probably get 5 different, probably relatively consistent, but
like just a little bit different. Yeah.
I've never had to think that in depth about those questions before.
Yeah.
So I think what determines whether you're more conservative is more of like an aptitude. So I'm thinking a little bit of a Jordan Peterson video where he was talking about how liberals tend to be more creative minded and conservatives tend to be more better at implementing, like industrious type. That's sort of more the way that they lean. So like you need both in a society, in an organization, a business, because you need the people who create new ideas, and then you need the people who can effectively implement and bring them about. So you need both. Now, what determines libertarian versus conservatarian, or
Authoritarian?
Yeah, libertarian versus authoritarian is, I think it might have to do with more intelligence. I don't know how, like I said before, I don't know how you measure intelligence, but I think the more intellectual, free-thinking, individualistic you are, the more confident you are with allowing society to be more open and granting people liberty. But if you are less capable of going outside of a small box, like if you're really fenced in intellectually, and I think that is pretty highly correlated with intelligence, I'd imagine, then you're probably far, far more likely to be authoritarian and to join a group like without thinking and to try to get your sense of identity from a collective.
That sounds like some research I want to do. But
I don't know.
no, I ran that by you the other day though. What makes somebody join a group? Remember?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's something I would want to explore. But I think that there's a lot of merit to that because you are when you're in education, you are encouraged for the most part to look at things from all sides
Mhm.
and to kind of, well, I mean, obviously form your own opinions, but to also give the opportunity to the opinions that you were so against, if that makes sense. You know, like I can't see myself, you know, going full conservative, but I can respect some points
Sure.
on it. Some others that, again, like more hardcore points about, you know, like I would disown this person and this person and this person if they came out or something. Like that'll never be me, and I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that that is like a entirely conservative behavior.
Yeah.
That's just like an example that's popping into my head. Um, being more on the creative side, I do find myself more liberal.
Mhm.
And I think for the most part, it's a lot of know thyself, but be willing to adapt to what's around thyself
Yeah.
and give it a chance, which is something that's so lacking. People will get, especially now, people get very stuck in there. This is what I believe. I
Mhm.
don't care what you believe. This is what I believe. This is what I want to believe, and you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah, they like to encamp themselves
Yes. Yes.
because that's where they get their validation from. Um, yeah, it's frustrating. I guess I would ultimately put myself in. I mean, the results of the political compass test had me in the bottom left quadrant, which was libertarian left. I wasn't far out on the left. I was more towards the center. Uh,
Yeah.
but that seemed right to me. And I would say that I generally don't like using labels. Like if somebody asked me, I would hesitate, and that's it can be a bad thing. It can be a tough thing because people generally want you to have a label assigned to you because then they can tell whether you're friend or foe.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just the way that I am with a lot of different things. I like to sort of see the whole feast laid out on the table and
Yeah.
cherry pick from like, oh, the conservatives, I think they're generally right about this. Liberals, I think they're generally right about that. The progressives, the this, the that, whatever labels. I mean, they all overlap in like a giant 1,000 circle Venn diagram. But
Yeah.
that's just my way of looking at it. I don't like to say, oh yeah, I'm going to take the whole tray of liberal or conservative or whatever. It's just not. It seems foolish to me. It
No,
obviously,
I agree.
yeah.
I I not only will, if I find myself at a dinner party, which again I don't, um, try a little bit of everything,
Mhm.
but I also am of the same mind that, you know, putting this steadfast label on myself is something that I don't want to do in certain circumstances. Like if it was, you know, are you, I don't know, t-shirt and jeans or formal wear?
Yeah.
Obviously I'm going to put myself in t-shirt and jeans. If it's, you know, are you a broke student or a, you know, have a full-time job? I'm a broke student. You know, that type of thing. Like self-identification has taken many forms. Many forms.
Mhm.
And I think it's great. Whatever you bel believe, however you perceive yourself, who you love, as I've said before, I don't care, I'm happy for you. Do what feels right.
Yeah.
In that, placing a label on yourself, whether it's uh, gender, sexuality, political stance, what have you, you open open yourself up for a lot of criticism, close yourself off from a lot of opportunity, and kind of pigeonhole yourself into being stuck in this one spot, which is why it's so important to kind of take that, well, I can see both sides of what's being said to me,
Mhm.
and not be so steadfast in all your beliefs.
Yeah. And it's meant, the label is meant to be a quick consult, almost like if you have something on a shelf in a store, right? You'd be like, oh, okay, this person is roughly that, I get it. So like
Yeah.
that's the beauty of labels, and like they can allow you to quickly sort, almost like how stereotyping is a natural human tendency, but it can be brought to a degree in a modern context that, is more harmful than beneficial. So it's like, ultimately, sort of, you have to remember that if a label constrains what you are, then the labels that you generate constrain who other people are too. And this sounds like, well, yeah, this is just, you're just restating the case against like bigotry or generalizations or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough, that's true, but like, we pay lip service to these platitudes all the time, but we don't live by them at all.
It's true, and I think for some things it's a little bit different if you are stereotyped frequently, like
Mhm.
someone like myself who just chooses to have short hair,
Yeah.
but is stereotyped as, oh, she must be gay. She's not. She just has short hair,
Mhm.
and she's tall, so she needs longer jeans. Just let it happen. um but those stereotypes, I think, kind of give you a yeah, I'm saying I'm tall, you're like 6'10", but
Not 6'10", 6'3", I think.
yeah, please, like, I barely come up to your shoulder, but whatever.
Not
But
all people are the same height, Sarah. They're not all White Walkers
hey, listen,
or Ents.
you're tall, that's my point. um but for my gender, I'm taller than the average because I'm 5'9".
Mhm.
That matters at all. But for someone like me who will be thrown into a stereotype just based on the way I look, I think, or maybe I'm making myself sound like I'm some sort of, enlightened individual, but I try to not look at people and go, that's how they are just because of the way they look, just because it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But I also, at the same time, don't do anything to change that, and that's just me being stubborn, like, and refusing to fit into that little bubble. Also, crop tops are awful. Just, I don't know why they're a thing. I don't like them. I think, like, if you can rock one and feel comfortable, more power to you. Not me, not ever. No, it's just a
Mhm.
bad plan. Sorry. Rock on with your bad self, but I am not wearing one.
Mhm.
So that's just how it is for me. But I try to not go, oh, well, this person looks this way, so they must be this.
Yeah.
But
The majority of times that I've done that, where I've boxed somebody in like that, I've come to learn in relatively quick succession that they're not what I thought, and I feel really shitty about it. I feel really shitty about my assumptions, and
well,
or like maybe how I regarded them based on those assumptions. I don't think I'm like intense about it, but just like still in my, like, you create these models in your mind. You sort of like, um, what's the word, when you like start with a trend and then like, uh, shoot. Basically, like, you just like go off on a tangent in your head. You create this alternate reality of who this person is based on your initial assumption or judgment.
yeah, for the life of me, I can't come up with the word, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
um, I think, unfortunately, everybody does make snap judgments,
Mhm.
but that's not, if you keep them in your head, and it's like a quick judgment because your brain, there is the old brain and new brain thinking. The old brain being how you're initially wired, because the old brain says this is different, I don't know if I like this, that's just how it is, versus the new brain that goes, so what?
Yeah.
As long as you're not like out there going, hey, you're different than me, therefore I hate you, you're doing all right. I mean, it's next to impossible to not to look at someone and not make some sort of judgment.
Yeah, the goal should not be to not do it. It should be to recognize that you do it, and
Yeah.
to like catch yourself after the fact.
Yeah, and to kind of
Have a
go, okay,
conscious intercept of the unconscious instinct.
yeah, it's you kind of just gotta like grab a hold of reality for a second and go, well, you know what, maybe I overthought this, underthought this, made a stereotype, made a sweeping generalization. You know, it's all relative.
Yeah. And on the topic of generalizations, I've tried to tell this to people, and it's a sensitive topic, but like generalizations have a purpose. And like we were at the point in the past where, so like you have a generalization, and then obviously you have the exceptions, right? And
Yeah,
so there is a purpose to generalizations. It's generalization is just a culturally relevant word than the scientific equivalent, which is a trend, right? So like you can notice a pattern or a trend in I don't know, like a population of people or something like that. So like a generalization does have a use. Like it's not like it's entirely invalid, but we were overusing generalizations in the past in the sense of we were forgetting that there were exceptions, and often many exceptions to every generalization. Where we're at today is you're getting people who are so afraid of generalizations and saying that it's so bad to notice something that like a trend or something like that, that it's like basically only acknowledging the exceptions and forgetting or refusing to acknowledge that there's a trend. So it's kind of like the reverse. It used to be people not acknowledging the exceptions. Now a lot of people don't acknowledge the trends or the generalizations, and it's murky water because like you often have to be able to state trends that to be able to fix certain things, right?
that's very true, and I haven't really thought about that before, but you know, now that you're saying it, everybody either wants to be in their own little niche, like this is how I define myself, or don't define me.
Mhm.
It's like polar opposites, or it's it's like you said, it's that fear of making a generalization.
Yeah. I mean, look at this is just one example that popped into my head. Back in the 80s, AIDS related to gay men, right? If there was
Hmm.
not a generalization made about gay men and AIDS, like if somebody was like, "Hold on, let's not make this generalization because, you know, that's making an assumption about gay men or something like that," then that would have been detrimental, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about where people are like, this is like you have to, unfortunately, I think it relates to intelligence, is like you have to be able to have the discretion of determining when a generalization is more harmful than good and when a generalization is relevant and needed.
Yeah, like you're saying, yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. In the same vein, to counter that, let's go with tattoos in the workplace, which are finally now becoming more appropriate.
Mhm.
Um, there was a very long held conception, because for a while the people that had tattoos were on the fringe of society,
Yeah.
um, that you had tattoos, you must be relatively useless, or you know, come from jail or something, when in reality, who doesn't have a tattoo?
I am
um
so glad this is ending. That
yeah,
perception, it
yeah,
boggles my mind. It's like, okay, you have to work at Spencer's Gifts or Hot Topic or Newberry Comics if you have tattoos. Otherwise, stay out of the world.
yeah. I mean, one thing that I was thinking about last night, and this was just like so like down the line and stuff, because I mean, like, you know about my academic ambitions and stuff, and one day I would love to be, you know, Dr. Weisberg teaching in one of my ridiculous t-shirts with my tattoos out, and just like totally fighting that stereotype of like, look at me, I'm in academia, I have sleeves, I'm not stupid,
Yeah.
it's just the way I look, you know, and that's who I am. And at the same time, you know, it it's like one very little niche thing that I think would be hilarious and fun to test. There's like the guy that worked for NASA, it was a few years ago now, with the mohawk and tattoos, that helped land one of the, I don't know if it was on, I don't remember where the landing was, but everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's the mohawk guy." And it's like, I know his hair was different and he still can think. What?
It's yeah, like we're still living with some of these like ingrained prejudices. It's upsetting to think about how many people didn't get opportunities, or who could have contributed in some major way in the past but didn't. But the
Yeah.
only thing we can really do, you know, the only thing we can do to avenge that is to stop looking at it that way for you know, moving forward.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it's,
extrapolate was the word. They
there
will
it is.
eventually.
It runs the gambit too, because I've had older people come up to me and ask me about my tattoos, and I've had other older people come up to me and tell me, you know, like, "Oh, you ruined your skin, you're gonna look ridiculous when you're older," you know, things like that. And I'm like, I
Like,
don't recall
you're older,
asking.
you look ridiculous. Like, you just say that to them.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember once I was standing in line at the supermarket back in the day when we could do that, and this woman behind me was just grilling me about my tattoos, and finally I turned around and I was like, "Yeah, and that pantsuit was such a solid plan." And like, I try not to be rude like that, but she was just going on and on and on. I was trying to ignore her, and then finally I was just like, "Yep, powder blue pantsuit,
Was she
solid
talking
plan."
at you, like to your back, or was she talking
Yeah.
to somebody else about you?
No, she was talking at me because she started with "young man," which was phenomenal because just the short hair, like from behind. The only time I can understand it is if like I'm in baggy sweatpants and like a sweatshirt and you can't really tell. Like I'll understand
Yeah.
then. But like I was just dressed normal, and she was saying to me, she was like, "Young man, young man." I finally realized she was trying to talk to me, and I turned around and I was like, "No," and then turned back around and just started laying into me about my tattoos. And I was like, "All right, listen, Dorothy," which might have been your name, I don't know. I'm making a generalization because it's an older name, you know.
Gladys.
Enid,
He did.
Edith,
Y- Muriel.
Eunice.
Wait, what was the one you guessed? Was that Muriel? Was the first one?
No, I think I said like Dorothy or
Oh,
something, but
Dorothy. Okay, because I'm thinking.
Muriel's a
I
good
always
one.
think about when I think about old names, I think about Courage the Cowardly Dog, Muriel, and Eustace.
Yes. Oh my god, that's such a good show. Pop on Cartoon Network, grab some Fruit Loops. It's gonna be a great day.
Not like this will be a quick tangent, but not exactly in the realm of shows that are fully appropriate for kids. Like
Oh,
there was a
not at
lot of
all.
animal abuse in that show. They would just beat the shit out of Courage.
Oh my god, yeah. And then like you look at some of the other ones like Rocco's Modern Life.
Was okay. Was Ren and Stimpy actually a kids show? Because I really question that. It's
I, you know, looking back at it now, I don't know, because I mean it was in the kids lineup.
yeah.
And I
Really
mean
old.
like even Cat Dog had its moments of like,
Yeah.
yay, you
Cat
know.
Dog, Powerpuff Girls too.
Yep.
All these shows had like. My mom was pretty upset that I used to love Ed, Ed and Eddie when I was a kid. She was pretty sure that I was going to get brain damage from watching that show.
My parents, whenever they would see me watching Rocket Power, because that show was like, that was a fire show. Um Sorry, my inner millennial just came out there. I am so sorry.
I
Uh,
remember Cubies.
yeah. Oh my god. I hadn't thought of that in a while, but like, yeah, when I would be watching that, because like I've always skated and stuff, and like you'd watch them do a bunch of insane stuff. I swear they must have thought I was like the dumbest kid in the world, because they were like, "Whatever you just watch, don't go do it." And it's like, okay, good plan, because I have a giant ramp in the backyard, like things like that.
It's
But
funny
yeah,
that you mentioned like people being or saying people must have thought you were the dumbest kid ever, because like kids quoting TV shows, like if you're a kid quoting Rocket Power and you're with your friends going "Shoobies, man,"
yeah,
people are like, "What the hell are the like kids? Are they all high?" That's got to be times a million today. Like whatever it was in the past,
yeah,
because kids today must purely speak in cultural references. They must sound like walking Family Guy episodes or like meme factories, or like think about how kids do Fortnite and they just like, talk to each other on
yeah.
and 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 then like a parent overhearing or some adult stranger overhearing must feel like, are they even speaking anymore?
Yeah, that reminds me of, like, I had a video game. I think my cousins got it for me. It was the Simpsons Road Rage, and that was a great game. But one thing that I walked around mimicking all the time was Bart's line. Oh man, that sucks and blows. And I didn't know what it like. I just like was saying it, but I didn't really have the full context. I would just be like, "Oh man, that sucks and blows." And my parents would be like, "What?
Yeah.
What did you just say?"
Like, where do kids come up with this stuff? Yeah, this kid just told me to eat my shorts.
Yeah, like God, or I mean, if you, I'm just thinking about like the cartoons we watched as kids and stuff, and it was like, you had Rugrats, and there's that meme, which is for sure true, that the dad Stu was like a total stoner making pudding at like 3 in the morning.
Oh yeah. Now that you mention it, he was rather neglectful, and
It a little bit.
rude.
Yeah, Angelica was a raging bitch.
She was. Yeah, I think Susie was her better half.
Yeah, I think you know what? The Finsters did my people proud. I don't really have any complaints with how they portrayed
Were the
the
Finsters
Jews.
Jews? They
Yeah,
were. Wow.
99% sure Chucky was,
Enough of the show. If that was like
or
a
maybe the Pickles family. I don't remember. I just remember that it was like one of the few
pickles
shows.
kosher? Pickles are kosher, right? So
I mean, maybe. I remember just like because I didn't know of a lot of shows that had like a Jewish component to it. I was like, oh, okay, Hanukkah, you know. But you think back to some of those shows now, and it's just like, especially like Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life and things like that.
by the way, I gotta steer this back on course for like a
Yeah,
for a hot sec because this was an awesome intermission, but strictly because this series was about the military-industrial complex, and I never really explained. Like we were talking about a lot of pieces of what led up to it and established it, but okay. Um, Eisenhower back in the 50s, when he was leaving office, in his farewell address, he said, "Beware the military-industrial complex." This was 1958, I believe.
yes.
And at the time, nobody really knew what that meant. Very cryptic to everybody. They said, what exactly is a military-industrial complex? Didn't really have meaning at the time. So all of the papers focused on what he said about economics during
Yeah,
that speech. Um, and the military-industrial complex kind of got lost in, I don't know, what's the term, the annals of history. So
yeah,
um, now more than ever, we need to realize what it is and how it affects our life. So we were talking before about neoconservatives and neoliberals.
right.
And the culmination of what they believe has caused a defense industry to be way larger than it should ever possibly be. I mean, it was massive during the Cold War, and Reagan ramped up defense spending.
Yeah,
And then you'd think when our biggest enemy disappears in the early 90s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, that we could, okay, pull back on defense spending. But nope, terrorism, so ramp it up. So it was like from where it was at the end of the Cold War, it then doubled again or some crazy shit. So like we now spend more than like essentially the rest of the world combined, we've said effectively we ought to be the world police, and we don't, our generation doesn't know any better. We were born into this world, right? You know, this is just this is
Exactly.
normal. So we go, okay, the US, like, yeah, and we have jokes about it. We go, America, yeah, world police, whatever,
Yeah.
Team America, America, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, we like, I mean, I've got a flag on the ceiling. I think about the 4th of July. Everybody wears their like
Yeah,
American
I have a flag over there with
flag.
all the seals of the U.S. military across it from the American Veterans Disabled for Life Fund.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
exactly. And
and it's that hesitant patriotism.
yeah, it's like, I'm not saying patriotism is wrong. I'm not disrespecting veterans or anything like that. I'm saying that we have a system that incentivizes effectively going to war or being in a state of constant war without calling it war. You know,
Yeah,
generally over the last, all the military involvement we've had over the last like 80 years since World War II has been like non-official war, like invasions or interventions or police actions or something. Like Congress has not officially declared war since World War II, and
yeah,
that is extremely troubling. A lot of the power has been vested in the presidency,
yeah.
and it shouldn't be. And go ahead, sorry.
When I say hesitantly patriotic, I don't mean like you said, like anything against veterans or anything like that. You know, I have the utmost respect for the people that have gone over
Mhm.
and done very difficult jobs. When I say hesitantly patriotic, I mean more like um, when you see such money and power being poured into the war machine,
Mhm.
if you will, to go to have the American flag or something like that, you that's like it kind of goes into kind of being afraid of going, people are going to be mad at me if I wear this
Yeah.
or if I support this. And I think, or not, I think that's what I mean by hesitant patriotism, just that underlying, just like but
Yeah.
like you said, there's nothing wrong with being patriotic.
Mhm.
It's important.
Yeah, it's important. It's important that we don't let it like that, that we think more about it though. Like we sort of parse what we're proud of and what we endorse versus what we don't want to be. And thinking isn't easy. You know, it's like the mind does what's simplest, or it takes the path of least resistance. Um, so effectively, and a lot of people don't like to think about this way, but like militarism and patriotism has unfortunately become heavily embedded in conservative thought, because
Yeah.
conservatism really became established during the Cold War, and it was just one of the things that was like, this protects America. So you know, in the era of terrorism post 9/11, that ramped up, and it started to be like, hey, show me you're patriotic. If you're not wearing a flag, or if you don't, you know, salute or whatever,
Yeah.
you're a bum, or you're just like the draft dodgers in Vietnam, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and this is a painful truth that would make a lot of people very uncomfortable. But you think about what a lot of conservatives might criticize, and it would be the wanton waste of government's jobs programs, right?
Yeah.
So they think about the RMV, they think about bureaucracies, they think about people being who, you know, are just put into these positions and are exploiting a system basically. Well, what is the US military right now if it's not the biggest jobs program? I mean, not only with the soldiers themselves, but the military contractors. And this is what there's I've got
Civilian contractors too.
the what?
The civilian
The
contractors as well that work
civilian
for the military.
contractors too. And this is actually the book that I had read recently, America's War Machine, and it's actually written by a World War II soldier. And it goes all the way from World War II to like 2013 or 14 or something like that.
So
And
fairly recent.
yeah, it's fairly recent. And he talks about how the defense contractors, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all these companies, they try to get bids from the for government projects. Like the government says, we need this helicopter built or this missile built or something like that. And what these companies do is they spread out their subcontractors in as many districts and states as possible, so that that bid will be approved, because as many Congress people as possible will say, oh, this benefits my district, it gives jobs in my district. So it
Yes.
is like a really smart but very shady way of going about guaranteeing the continual purchase of shit that is not needed.
Yeah, and like I had said about the military subsidy theory, which was really about the dominance of the aviation companies.
Mhm.
Um, and you bring up Boeing. This is just a quick side note about military spending. Being the military superpower, you you see right now, especially with the need for food and coronavirus and everything like that, you see people lining up for food and stuff to be distributed by the National Guard, and you just gotta kind of wonder, like there's trillions of dollars invested in the military. Couldn't some of that go to feeding people? Just a thought. Like has nothing to do with the industrial complex or anything, but just something that I've been thinking about, just because it's the National Guard that is there handing food out.
It could. It absolutely could. I mean, this is the thing. I'm not saying every penny of it, we have to get rid of the entire defense budget, but it's
Well,
like,
yeah,
I mean, and this is the other kind of creepy thing is that you have the defense budget on paper, which the Pentagon, and by the way, the Pentagon is not audited. They're the only federal
really,
agency that is not audited. And
I didn't
that's
know
one thing
that.
that I liked about Andrew Yang's policies. He had a section on his site that was audit the Pentagon. So they're not audited, and they have a general budget. And then ever since 9/11, there has been a supplemental budget for wartime. And that is on an entirely different sort of accounting section. And so if you were just to look at the general budget, you wouldn't even see the additional wartime spending. And try to wrap your mind around this. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are going to end up costing $4 to $6 trillion when everything is said and done for. And the additional, the gap between 4 and 6 trillion is substantial, but the 6 trillion includes all of the interest payments, all of the veterans health coverage, all of the things that are sort of like going to be the legacy of these wars.
Yeah,
So this is the kind of thing that I think millennials in particular are realizing, is that like we cannot indulge in the same absurd debt that has been the effectively the status quo mode of operation for the last however many decades, like since World War II, like debt on debt on debt on debt. Somebody's going
because
to have to pay
eventually
that.
that debt has to be paid,
Yeah. And it's
and
going to be us and our kids and
our kids,
yeah.
and down the line, 100 years from now, kids are gonna be going, thanks so
Yeah.
much.
So, we've got to pull out of these. I mean, we don't even generally know why we're in the conflict to begin with. It's another one that we started when we were young, and it's been going on forever, and we even forget that we're there.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the 4th grade when the Twin Towers went down.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then every time somebody says, well, don't you think we could take some of that money and put it towards something else? People are like, no, because then the world will collapse, then the US will lose all of its strategic power. Like, it's the neoliberals and the neoconservatives are the establishment that you see people fighting against right now. This
Yeah,
is this is why Donald Trump, why Bernie Sanders, why Andrew Yang are a thing right now. Is people are saying, like, we have a system that serves itself in an oligarchical way. It's
yeah,
not the democratic thing. That it's not. It might be couched in, hey, this is the Constitution, but that's not what this is right here. This is something that is self-serving, serves giant defense contractors. And by the way,
Borderlines on dictatorship
borderlines on dictatorship.
in some instances.
Yeah, it does. And
Yeah. Not in all of them. Not in all of them. I will say that for sure. But in certain circumstances, you kind of wonder, like, you do realize, like, you're not the king of America, right?
yeah,
Did
exactly.
someone let you know that?
And America isn't king of the world. Like, this is one of the things that we're going to have to realize is, like, you know, when you storm into, like, we're sort of the bull in the china shop. And like, I love the United States. It's like there's a bunch of fantastic things. There's a lot of shitty things too. Like, I think we need to reconcile both of those. And this is one of those shitty things where it's like we go in and we fuck shit up. We break it. And a lot of it's once again people go, yeah, we fucked that shit up. And it's like, no, that's not a good thing. It's not a
Yeah.
good thing that we just broke everything. Because as Colin Powell said with Iraq and Afghanistan, like, you break it, you own it. We
Yeah.
own it now, and we're going to be dealing with the consequences, and the world is going to be dealing with the consequences. So look at the difference between the budgets of the Defense Department and the State Department. It is astronomically different. We need to take some of that defense budget and put it into diplomacy. For God's sake.
Y'all, it's clerk in 2020. Just, there you go. Just, I'll stand next to you and just be like, yep.
Is there, I mean, by the way, the more the more we continue to invest in the military infrastructure of the Cold War weapons systems, the more we buy more of these Ospreys and these weird planes and shit that cost billions of dollars each and don't work in the desert or whatever, like all these scandals. Yeah, the threats are not, and this is another, I was alluding to this in a previous episode, is that, like, once you're part of an institution or an establishment, you then insist in the absolute necessity, essential nature of the thing that you're a part of. And that's where we're at right now, is we're getting all these generals and military wonks being like, no, we need 7 more aircraft carriers. We need 20 more nuclear submarines. No, we don't need that shit, because the way that we're heading, the bigger threats are going to be in cyberspace. So the more we have these traditional weapon systems of the Cold War era that we have to maintain and constantly produce more of, the less we're prepared for, like, you know, a cyber attack or a satellite attack or something like that.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is definitely the number one thing that we need to be prepared for.
Yeah.
And buying planes doesn't do that. In a shocking turn of events.
It does not. It's basically a slower form. What the military industrial complex is almost like a slower version of the bailout of the auto companies and the big banks. It's like, let's continue to, these companies, these defense contractors have become so dependent on federal contracts that if it was just gone tomorrow, they'd collapse essentially. So, you know, that whole too big to fail thing where, if we let the banks fail, then the whole economy is going to collapse. That's kind of where we're at right now. It's like, we have to phase out of this so that, you know, Boeing can adapt.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like, I'm just sitting here thinking about it. Like, sometimes when I'm out driving and I'm not listening to something and, like, I kind of go off on these tangents. It hasn't happened lately because I've had a lot to do, but, you know, you start thinking about it and you kind of wonder, how do we get so far down this rabbit hole of debt and industrial questionability and all these different things, and nobody goes, hold up. And the people that do, to be fair, the people that do go, hold up, this isn't where we need to be putting our funding. get smacked down so hard that you don't hear from them again.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's like, forget needle in a haystack. Like, it's like an unanswerable question, but, or not unanswerable, but I don't think we have the answers yet. But
Yeah, I mean,
or
it requires thinking hard, and that is uncomfortable. So these situations get a lot of momentum, and then people start to get wealthy, and people build their families and their careers and their reputation and their sense of identity on top of these things, and then it
yeah,
becomes extremely hard to shift them. And then you get people who say, this isn't working, or somebody should be paying attention to this, and like you just said, they get slapped down.
yeah,
And eventually the shit fuckery gets so intense that like there's so many things going wrong at once that you cannot ignore it anymore. It is system wide, and that is where we are right now. Is so
I'm
many things are
going to
going
use
wrong.
shit fuckery in
The
so
shit
many.
fuckery is wrong in so many different ways, whether it's the military industrial complex, Hollywood, the media, the church, the pharmaceutical industry, the war on drugs.
You
uh,
know, I have a paper to write about the Israeli Zionist movement and the pushback that they got with the British Mandate. Shit fuckery is going in there
yep,
because
shit
it's
fuckery.
just true.
Put
That
it,
was just a whole bunch of shit fuckery.
put it there.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna tell my professor and be like, listen, buried in that paper is something that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. And it's a lot. It's sort of a tragedy on the commons, or a tragedy of the commons, where it's a lot easier to just not think about it and to say like, that's complicated. Uh, it's uncomfortable because I don't know the answer, and I just want to make it somebody else's job to think about.
Yeah, I don't wanna, I'm not gonna, it's someone else's problem, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, and it'll go away. Well, guess what? It doesn't go away. It gets worse, and somebody does have to think about it. And it's not just changing one thing; it's changing about a lot of things simultaneously. And that's where that whole concept, institutional change that you keep hearing about, is so
Yeah,
important, because we're going to, in a short amount of time, have to change a lot of institutions. And I'm not saying we switch over and become communistic or become some like dictatorship or anything like that, but clearly the assumptions and the old mental models and the way of looking at things, like, that shit's not working anymore.
it's not. I mean, maybe that girl in Mean Girls had it right. You know, just bake a cake of rainbows and smiles, and
That could work.
it could, because I mean,
Make
like
it
nothing else has.
up.
Like, you know, you can get really caught up really fast in all the things that are such a mess, and it can get really scary to think about. Like, this is what I'm gonna be dealing with for the rest of my life. But at the same time, it's when you let that fear dictate how you're going to handle what's coming at you for the rest of your life,
Mhm.
that's when you're really fucked.
Yeah, because something can be done about it. You just need to get enough people to say, wait a second, let's talk about this.
Yeah,
This is
like,
like, you have to get a critical mass of courageous people to say, well, no, this doesn't have to be the way that it is. Like, we can actually do something about this, and let's start fixing it.
yeah, I mean, it it sounds cliche, but it really does start with one person. It
Mhm.
takes one person to go, this isn't right. And then it's a snowball effect. And like a snowball, it's going to hit bumps, it's going to have a problem. You're not going to have all the answers, but you're going to find those people that have the forethought or the insight or the ability to kind of draw those distinctions that need to be brought together to make some sort of difference. And it's not an overnight fix. And in a world of instant gratification, people don't like that. Tough shit. You
Yeah,
gotta, you either you get in line with the possibility of making things better, or you just become another statistic of I gave up.
yeah, yeah. And things like, if you just say, let's ride it out, you're going to be like the people that stay home in the middle of a, you know, uh, what are they called, like stage 5 hurricanes or whatever.
Yeah. It's like, now we got this. And then when, you know, the house is 40 miles from where it started, like, yeah, you got it?
Yeah.
You sure?
So
It's mind-boggling
yeah,
at the very least.
we don't have the luxury of avoidance anymore.
No,
Like,
it's shit's hitting the fan,
yeah, and
and
like this is
has
why it's
been
important
for a
to
while.
like there's a certain sort of mind that is capable of saying like, okay, let's look at this. And if we link together those minds through, and we don't have to form like formal institutions like existed in the past. A lot of the formal institutions that existed in the past were because that was really the only option. Like you had to have a brick and mortar institution and then you get people together physically. Now we can have, our technology enables us to get the brightest minds together in informal ways, in informal networks, through podcasts or through social media or through, so if you can get people talking about things and sharing their ideas, and it's almost like you form this mega mind together. That sounds weird, but it's like when you have enough intelligent, engaged minds linked together, it's like the neurons in our own minds, and
Yeah,
you get these new neural pathways that develop between minds, and then you get brilliant ideas of like, fuck, I have this, where we have the solution, let's do this.
yeah, and I mean, as maybe not even corny, but just the reality is a hashtag literally can change the world. The Me Too movement, the March for Our Lives, not one more. You know, it's stuff like that that obviously those are things that, the struck while the iron was hot. The iron has been hot for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's time to either strike it or we're going to continue to live in this never-ending continuum of the fuck do we do next?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's actually, to be honest with you, it's a situation waiting for a leader. That's
Yes.
ultimately what this is right now. Is like everything is primed and ready to go, but we don't have, like, the leader that we have right now is not the most capable.
He is a
So like it,
leader in the loosest sense of the word.
yeah. So that's the situation we're in. Is like everything is kind of stalled, waiting on somebody to be like, look, I will lead, and it doesn't need to be a leader in the traditional sense of like, by the way, when FDR came into power, or when Abraham Lincoln came into power, or when George Washington, when these big figures came into power, they were nobodies. Like nobody expected anything from them. They're like, this person is taking this job, okay. So it doesn't have to be somebody that like right off the bat looks impressive, first of all. Second of all, it doesn't have to be a leader in the traditional sense of like, this person has all of the knowledge and knows everything and will implement it. It's maybe this person is representative, but the people that they put around them as their like brain trust, they're diverse enough where they share all different types of opinions.
Yeah.
um, this person will be able to draw on all of these informal networks that I was talking about before. We'll be able to say, hey, like, I like this idea that you're talking about. So it's like leadership is going to be more distributed than it was in the past, where we just looked at this one person and said, yes, please, Messiah, save us.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it needs to be this different, like, wealth of people, because if you have a bunch of people that think the exact same thing, you have a cult. If you have
Yep.
a bunch of people that think entirely too like-minded, I mean, it's fine for a bit, but you don't have the opportunity to look at the other side.
Yeah.
So it all the way around, it circles around to diversity is what's going to change the complex.
It will.
A lack of fear of that diversity is paramount in having any hope of the complex being changed.
Mm-hmm. And when you say like this is the problem with the word diversity, is like it's such a buzzword PR term now that like when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about like, skin color or what genitalia you have or whatever. We're talking about people who think differently, who come
Yeah.
from different, because there's such an assumption made with diversity that like if you look different, then you are automatically like maximally different, where it's like you don't know whether that trans woman and that black guy and that Asian lady like grew up in the same exact area and the same exact circumstances,
Yeah.
think identically to each other. That's not really true diversity. You also have to have a diversity of experiences and ideological diversity, really.
Yeah, I mean, I use you and me as an example all the time, but it's very true, especially in this circumstance. You and I grew up in effectively the same place, and we went to the same schools, and we did, for lack of a better way to put it, we did the same stuff growing up.
Mhm.
But our pasts, completely different. Our family genealogies, completely different. Do we have the same skin tone? Yes. Does it matter? No. But it's those things that, like, okay, so my grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and I bring that to the table.
Mhm.
And then your family did other stuff that I don't know about yet, but I'm sure you'll tell me at some point. And that makes you completely different. And those two ideologies right there, while we might look similar or have come from the same place, we have two completely different outlooks on the world. Or maybe not completely different, given the fact that this is an open discourse where we're not fighting with each other.
Mhm.
But if you take somebody else that came from where we're from, they're going to have a completely different background. And I think because, like you said, diversity is such a buzzword, it's lost on a lot of people that people that look very similar came from the same spot. We all have such a different story. Throw it together, just even in the simplest of terms, and you've got something huge on your hands. You've got a think tank all on your own, just from similar experiences.
And a true think tank, not just a justification tank. Because
Yeah,
this is another thing that they talked about in the that the author talked about in the War Machine book, is there's this whole network of think tanks that they're conservative think tanks, neoconservative think tanks that exist, and they're not truly think tanks, they're justification tanks, because their sole purpose is to justify going to war or invading some
yeah,
country or do like that's not a think tank. When you get like-minded people together, that's not a think tank. In the next chapter in diversity is going to have to be empowering all of the smaller constituent components of all of these diversity groups. So whether it's you know African Americans, Asians, women, LGBT, like all these groups politically are treated as if they're monoliths. They're not. There's a
yeah,
whole range of opinion. There are minorities within minorities. There are people who like let's say you have a libertarian or a conservative opinion and you happen to be trans. Maybe the trans community like is not very accepting of that within itself. Like all of these groups um, need to be seen as like just like the argument has been made that like gender is a spectrum. Like we need to see all of these groups as spectrums of belief and ideology and experience, and people are individuals and they all bring something different. Stop treating like LGBT like it's this one block of identical NPCs,
yeah. Or it's like jury selection. You pick a number, any number. It's a person. Put them in a room. Have a conversation,
Mhm.
which is very baseline for probably the easiest way to do it. But it's long story, not remotely short or even kind of over, because it's such a diverse and tough topic and scenario. Just talk to each other. Get out of your like your get out of your head and go have a conversation with someone, because the likelihood of finding something you agree on and then something you can debate on could be that thing, could be that one little that one little grain of sand that changes everything. And again, that is more than a pipe dream, but eventually it's got to happen, so why not now?
Yeah. You don't have to go to the ends of the
All
earth.
stuck in our house, might as well do something.
Say that again. That was in a very Stephen Hawking robot voice because it was.
I said, might as well get to it now. We're all stuck in our houses anyway, so
Yeah.
talk to each other.
Have a conversation with somebody that you think you know well. You find out that you're more different than you thought. Have a conversation with someone who you think you have nothing in common with. You'll find out that you have a lot more in common than you think.
Yeah,
You don't have to go to the ends of the earth to find interesting people. Like, this is what people say. They go like, oh, I've got to travel to Italy or to Croatia or to French Polynesia or like freaking Burkina Faso or something. It's like, no, you don't have to go to these places. You just talk with somebody on your street.
Yeah.
They probably have a fascinating story. They're probably a very textured person, very nuanced. Just talk with them.
Yeah, I mean, shit, talk to the person you went to school with 10 years ago, and life's completely different, but there's those similarities and differences. Talk to the people you knew a few years ago, because things change. You have life events that completely upend your world and change your worldview, and you're a completely different person. So you wall yourself off to so much if you don't give things a chance.
Man, we have covered some ground tonight. This has been a good conversation.
Yeah, it's been a good one. We're just out here kind of changing the world just a little bit.
Yeah. Let's pat ourselves on the back. Job done.
Yeah.
Okay, so rounding this out, kind of closing it, back to the military-industrial complex one more time.
Yes.
There's a bunch of other things that are extremely relevant and worth knowing. I'm not going to get into really those tonight. So do your own research. Research why there is a separate drone program that the CIA operates. That's a pretty interesting and concerning thing that most people don't know.
Pick up a book.
Yeah.
Take it for a ride. See what happens.
Take it for a ride and ask questions about things. Things that just seem like they're the status quo, or things that you have never questioned before. Question why they are the way that they are. Yeah. Embrace that kid spirit. Kids ask questions about everything. Why are the leaves?
Yeah. Yeah, like my little nephew asked me, like, he saw me in the car, so he was like, why are you in the car? Oh, because I'm driving. Why? Just use that inquisitiveness. Get out there and talk to people. And, great example, I had a conversation with a teacher I had in like elementary school, because we happened to cross paths. Because it's different now. I'm an adult and everything. It's completely different. Life takes you in a million different directions. Talk to the people you see on the path along the way, or you're gonna have missed out, and you only have one chance.
Yes. And in this case, talk to veterans. For God's sakes, talk to veterans. I'm not saying go up to them and ask generic questions. I know it might feel awkward sometimes because you don't know what to say, but just treat them like people and have a conversation about this stuff. Be like, what do you think about this? You might be surprised. You probably will be surprised.
There was a
huge range of opinion among veterans when it comes to the military. I've talked with a fair number of them, and there's like quite a distance between like the military is fucked up and as an institution needs to change, and there's like total drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I mean, in my history class right now, there's a wonderful guy named Bill who served in Vietnam, and we'll talk at length. He is such a wealth of information. I love talking to him. And when I worked at a retirement facility, there were a lot of veterans. Some wanted to tell me every story they ever had and would follow me around to do so. And I'd be like, if you want to talk to me, I'm very busy, because I'd be like, but if you want to follow me while I vacuum, let's go. And that would be or people that didn't want to talk about it, or people that had all these opinions. Talk to people from 6 feet apart right now. But as things go on, talk to people, learn more about, the world around you, because like I said, you have one shot to do it.
Mhm.
And, there's that thing that goes around that's like, one day we all went out to play in the street and we left, and we didn't know that that was going to be the last time that we all got together and played as kids. Take every day like that. It might be the last time you get to have a conversation with someone, because for all you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So take that time, ask those questions, have those conversations. Are they all going to be comfortable? No. Are they worth it? Yes. Even the uncomfortable ones, 1,000% worth it, because you're going to come away with something you didn't have before. And even if it wasn't a good conversation, you both benefited.
Ultimately, generally more so the uncomfortable ones are the worthwhile ones. So
Yeah, the ones that kind of make you like cringe a little bit while they're happening, unless they're like disgusting, because there's an exception to every rule.
yeah,
But for the sake of the argument, two opposing belief systems that have the courtesy to listen to each other and have a conversation, 9 times out of 10, both sides are going to take something away from it. And even if you don't, at least you can say you tried.
exactly. The last thing, last thing, and this is something that might be fairly unexpected on the topic of military-industrial complex, but the term, toxic masculinity comes up a lot now. It's
Yeah.
another buzzword, and I think that like I have mixed feelings about it, but in general, I know the gist of what's being said, and I do think that part of the conversation needs to be, okay, like generally war seems to be something that is like a country's way of ultimately using unused testosterone at a massive scale. Like
True.
it kind of is. And like the way that young men are incentivized effectively to put themselves in harm's way and sacrifice themselves, and the way that sort of, and this is what a friend said on a previous podcast episode, and I said, shit, I did not think about it that way. He said, isn't the military sort of like what becoming a stripper is for young women, where it's selling your body?
I
Like,
heard I
isn't
heard that, and I was like,
yeah, I mean
what?
that's what this is, and it's the promise of glory, of sexual access, of all these things, like, hey, and so like we need to sort of think as a society about not only how like the signals that we send to young women, but also the ones that we send to young men too.
Yeah, I think that as far as toxic masculinity goes, it's there for sure. But I think there are, like everything else in this world, there's such a spectrum of it, and it doesn't get the amount of attention and thought that it should.
Yeah. And
That isn't negative. That isn't just going, oh, it's toxic masculinity. It should be like, if you think so, have a conversation about it.
yeah, exactly. And don't treat testosterone, don't pathologize testosterone. Like testosterone isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be channeled to great purposes. And I think our challenge as a society is figuring out how to connect a lot of angry, disenfranchised feeling young men with a sense of purpose, positive purpose that helps society. Because that's
That's
ultimately,
so important. Positive purpose.
yeah, that's ultimately what a lot of them are looking for. I mean, the stuff we've talked about, like hate groups, gangs, terrorism, like all
Cults.
this cults, like otherwise, that's what scams.
We
That's
need to talk about cults more. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
But that was perfectly put. Positive, a positive use of masculinity. You know what? Just everybody, just you know what? Take 5 minutes, get to know the person next to you and the people around you. And I mean, I'm sitting here like I'm gonna get a fucking Nobel Prize for what I'm saying, and I'm not. But like, just give it a chance, and don't, like, just take the narrow-mindedness that we unfortunately have just from our society, throw that shit out the window, and give something else a try, because clearly that ain't working. So rewind, think about it again, and do it different.
Yeah.
And that's what'll separate our generation.
The next hero generation. That's what I'm banking on.
Hell yeah.
Right. That's it. That's all I've got in the tank tonight. But that was really, really great conversation. We covered all over the place. That intermission there, that was like had nothing to do with the topic as the previous episode, but like really, really good stuff.
Yeah. I think one thing that's good about the way we talk to each other is we're very, like, we think pretty similarly, but at the same time have about I mean, you have a longer attention span than I do. I will give you that hands down, because I will go from thing to thing to thing very quickly. But you know, just the way that we talk to each other, we find a synergy in a topic and can go for a very long time.
Yeah, it's kind of complementary. I guess that's what synergy is. That's another part. Like I had to ask, like, what does that mean?
Yeah, no, like we find that kind of rhythm, and then we start talking, and then, you know, there's something shiny in the corner, we address it, and then we move back.
Exactly. Like maybe intelligent seagulls.
Yeah. Instead of being like, mine, we're off on the rock going, yours?
Exactly.
Ours?
Let's try something different.
Do we share? I mean, like, it could be I can share something with you, you know, like.
Well, everybody else is off trying to figure out how to eat a chili dog off of the table at the beach snack shack. We're off thinking serious things. So.
We're just two seagulls sitting on a rock trying to make sense out of life.
Right on.
Oh, I should get that tattooed on me, just like two seagulls, just going. I'm gonna do it now.
That would be one that I would advise against. Do not get seagulls.
What if it was just like the outline of a seagull, and it was just like a little thought bubble that just says ours? You know, just like, or like seagulls with like little glasses. That would be hilarious.
You gotta. That's thought provoking. You got to think about that tattoo, because imagine how many people, like, I don't know how many people ask about tattoos to begin with, but if that's a visible tattoo, everybody's going to ask about it. So
the one I get asked about the most actually is this one, and that was that's a Holocaust memorial for my grandparents. That's their birthdays, because they survived, with the traditional Holocaust memorial symbol. And it says Lador Vador, which means from generation to generation. That's the one I get asked about the most.
Has anybody had a very cringy? Do people try to guess what it is before they ask you? Is this a chainsaw or something? And you're like,
I've had a couple people call it like a white trash barbed wire tattoo, because it is barbed wire, and it's the first tattoo I got. And I remember saying to that artist, please don't make this look like your traditional barbed wire tattoo. This is very important. Like, and he did a fantastic job. Then when they find out what it is, they're like, oh. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
So you want to keep talking, or
you gotta tiptoe with tattoos, because you don't know.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it would be funny, maybe somewhere down the line. I don't know, but you know, it's always worth taking that extra couple minutes and just kind of. I always ask about tattoos, because I find them interesting, and designing them and having them, and the only part that kind of sucks is getting them, because it hurts. But then once you have them, it's kind of dope.
What does it actually feel like?
It depends where it is. Like this one back here, and like up here in general, like the arm itself doesn't hurt that much. Under the arm, different story. Like right here hurt so bad, because I could feel it go all the way down.
Radiating, what is it, like a sting?
At its lightest, I would like.
It's tough because it's its own sensation.
For me, I would say at its like base level, it's like scratching a sunburn.
Okay.
and like a light sunburn, because after a while, at least for me, like I don't really feel it much
Yeah.
because it's just going over the same area. At its worst, I was calling my tattoo artist a bitch, and he did not appreciate that. But this really hurt, and I reserve the right to say that.
Is it
Um,
like pushing a needle into your skin, or what does it feel?
yeah.
What does it? Can
Well,
you compare it to anything?
um, you know when you get blood drawn?
Yep.
Absolutely nothing like that. That hurts way more.
Really?
Because yeah, because they're going straight into a vein. This is just it is if you ever have the opportunity, go on YouTube and look up slow motion tattooing, and you can see the gun go up and down.
Okay,
Because what
so
they're
it's,
doing,
it's like a less bad blood draw, but thousands of
it's
times.
like, have you gotten an allergy test? Because where they like scratch your skin.
Yeah. No, I have not had one of those.
Okay,
But
it's like,
that's okay. That
I
rough
don't know,
comparison.
kind of, yeah. It like
There,
I'll never be that person that's like,
I'll just accept there is no comparison.
no. I'll never be the person that like, oh, it's not that bad, you
Yeah.
know, because I mean, parts of it do really hurt, but I at its most baseline, especially like shading and stuff, I equate to scratching a sunburn. Some stuff definitely does hurt more depending on where it is on the body. Like I have one on my hip that hurt a little bit more. And the funny story there was I was with someone who was getting her first tattoo. So I was trying to be very like stoic, like it didn't hurt, when in reality I was like, you know.
Wait, did you go in with a planned tattoo, or did you get the tattoo because your friend was getting one and you didn't want them to feel like,
Oh, I always go in with a planned
oh,
tattoo. The only time I haven't was some shops do on Friday the 13th, they do like $31 tattoos and it has to incorporate the number 13. Happens to be my favorite number anyway.
yeah.
So I have this one right here. Um, but I mean, in reality, it's a very, more often than not, it's a lot less painful than people expect. And then that, well, for me, when I got my first tattoo, I was like, oh, this doesn't hurt nearly as bad as I thought it was going to. I'm going to be covered. But there are like online, there's the tattoo pain index, and there's a lot of those like graphs and stuff, and they're pretty spot on.
Okay.
And I think tattoos are great. I enjoy them a lot, not just because like I think I look cool, but because, not to sound trite, but everything I have for a reason.
Mhm.
And I go on the, not on the assumption, on the, my train of thought is if I can't tell you why I have this tattoo when I get it, or 10 years down the line, then it shouldn't be on me.
Mm.
And that's my gauge for having ink. If I can't tell you why I have it or why it means something to me, then I shouldn't have it.
I've warmed to them. In the past, I thought it was something that should be pretty much restricted to, like, if you're in a gang, if you're in the military, if you were in the Holocaust, or like a couple other things, like a Maori, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've slowly like warmed to them in general. I think I just had like a succession of seeing people with either really stupid tattoos, or like extremely generic ones, the ones that you go to the like henna artist and you're like, I want that one.
Yeah. Yeah, like I got this butterfly because it represents how free I am.
I got
I
one on my ankle.
yeah. I got the Chinese symbol for peace. Now, I don't speak Chinese, but I'm pretty sure it's either that or Mushu pork. I don't know. Um, but I when I got into designing my own tattoos and stuff and designing for other people, that gave it even another level of why I love them so much, and the tattoo culture and everything. I also, when I got my first tattoo, the guy in like the booth area next to me was getting his throat tattooed, and I was like, what am I walking into right now? And
Yeah,
it was a whole mess of emotions.
that sounds intense.
It was. I was like,
I'd be like, all right, just have me go another day where I can feel more badass, please.
yeah.
Put me
I
next
just
to the person getting a Not
I just looked over and I was like,
or a face tattoo.
yeah, I just looked over and I was like, oh, why? You know? But yeah, no, I don't know. I love tattoos for the fact that they are art, and if there's a reason for them, because again, if you're like, I have a butterfly because I'm so free, I'm gonna have questions. But I do know people that have butterfly tattoos that have like a solid meaning, like, oh, like someone had said to me, like, I used to go like to this one specific meadow and sit with my grandmother and we would just watch butterflies when I was a little kid. And like that's cute. I like that. But if you're like, I have this tribal butterfly because I am a warrior and very free, I'm gonna be like, and you got it off the wall at the tattoo parlor. Good for you.
Oh man, tattoos could be its own episode. This was a good cool down lap. I have to say,
Yes.
from the main attraction. So
Yes. Yes. I'll always do an episode about tattoos. But yeah, no, I thank you for having me for these past 3 episodes. It's been a lot of fun.
yes.
Definitely getting to delve into stuff that I find interesting that people typically don't. So
You're welcome back anytime because there's a lot that we can talk about. So we'll start planning the next one right away.
awesome.
And I guess I got to get going because I got to get processing this and have it up because I'm supposed to have it up on Wednesday. So,
Yeah,
about
I
2
have
hours.
a
It
I
should
have
be easy.
yeah, no, I have a paper and a quiz and some other random stuff to do, but if you've made it this far in the podcast, everybody, I'm gonna be starting a vlog channel and I'm
Yeah.
bringing Pat with me, and it's going to be a visual representation of other stuff we find interesting because we've discovered we have dovetailing interests.
Do you have a name yet? Potentially.
So fucking cool with Sarah and Pat.
So fucking cool with like a backwards, no C, FUK apostrophe N with a backwards K.
Yeah, there we go.
Don't do that. All right. That'll be the placeholder, maybe.
Yeah, we'll figure something out, but we'll like I had an idea, we'll go to like the Bridgewater Triangle or something,
Yes.
film stuff, and then like
Yes.
either do a podcast about it, or I was talking earlier about like thoughts by the fire, just kind of unloading and unwinding, the things that
Good
we've
stuff.
seen and
Yep.
done. So get excited, everyone. We're
Coming soon.
coming very soon to a screen and stuff near you. It's us still talking about random things that we find interesting.
Right on. Good
All
night,
right.
Scott.
Good night,
Good
Pat.
luck. Good night.
Thank you.